What is up, lovers of budget cars and bikes, and welcome back to another video for 2020. And we are now just about in August. I mean, it's a stunningly beautiful day. That's the bike beeping. We'll talk about that in a minute. A stunningly beautiful end of July / beginning of August day, and the sun is finally out. It's finally stopped bloody raining down here in Cornwall, which is always a bonus. And I've decided to take this beautiful girl out for a little ride. And I actually only bought this yesterday, so it's more of a kind of first impressions, first ride out, kind of feelings about the bike, etc, more than a full-on long-term review. So kind of bear that in mind if you would. I just wanted to do a video now because it's such a beautiful day, and I've been out on it for at least an hour and a half, and I've kind of gotten to know the bike in that respect, because I think you kind of do in the first hour and a half. You know whether you like a bike or whether it's a complete bag of crap and isn't going to suit you. So I thought I would stop off and make this little one for you guys. This is something that I've been considering for quite a while. I mean, I didn't actually make a video on my first ever Ducati, which was a Ducati 1000 SS, or sometimes called DS, but it's the SS. If you look at my first ever videos from well over a decade ago, there's a couple of videos in there about me buying a GPR exhaust system for it, but I didn't actually ever really review the bike. I didn't, the channel hadn't even really been made then. I don't even know what it was called, but you'll see the bike there, generally speaking, and that was in Senna Grey with Machini red wheels, which was just stunning as a colour combo, and I really wanted to keep that. I mean, the story is I was living in Greece. I decided I want to get back into biking. I had it shipped over from Riders of Bristol to Greece. Had it there for a couple of years, had it shipped back to the UK, and then realised I just couldn't ride them anymore. I mean, if you've seen these 1000 Super Sport Ducatis, they are really low down as a riding position, and I'm not a young guy anymore. So unfortunately I had to sell it. And I've always kind of missed it, that whole clatter of the dry clutch, the low-down torque, the character that is an older Ducati in that respect. And I wanted another one, and I almost bought another SS, to be fair, because you know what it's like, you forget how much they hurt to ride after a while. And I thought, well, what about an ST2, ST3, ST4, etc. But the time was never right. I couldn't find the one I wanted. And then all of a sudden, this popped up on a Facebook page. It wasn't on Gumtree, it wasn't on eBay, it wasn't a paid advert. It was just some guy basically popped this up on a Facebook group. I think it was probably just Marketplace, actually. And I thought, well, why not? Let's see what this is all about. He had it advertised as 7,000 miles. It wasn't quite that good. It had a clock change in 2008, I believe. And so ultimately it's done 11,800 miles, which is still sub 12,000 miles, which is still bloody low when you consider this is a 2004. So it's 16 years old, so 12,000 miles is, 700-800 miles a year? It's nothing. And it is, as you can see, in utterly stunning condition. I don't know what these little stickers are up here. I'm pretty sure that's not supposed to be here, but I think it kind of goes with the bike. I'm not so sure. I might take that off. I haven't really decided. But as you can see, it is the ST4S. So you get all the little toys, you get the nicer little bits. He did choose apparently to have the option of the carbon fibre front mudguard as well, because I was wondering about that when I saw the photographs. It needs a bit of a clean. I mean, I've tried to get some degreaser on these old Brembo calipers at the front here, but once they start to go, I realised, if you watch the video I made on the GSX 1400, I took those calipers off and repainted them, because once they start to go, it's hard, I think, really to get them back to that really shiny gold. And there's obviously a little bit of corrosion going on. Well, it's not really corrosion, it's just, wear and tear from years. I mean, as I said, it's a 16-year-old bike. But paintwork-wise, as you can see, it is a stunner. It really is beautiful. It's got a tiny little knock on the mirror here, but if you look from the back of the bike, they do stick out like Will Smith's ears, And the only other mark I found is here, and it's not really a mark. I'll see if I can shade that out for you. It's not really a mark. It's this tank protector here where something's it's pulled away, basically. So I'm going to get a new one of these. I might even do what this guy did and get a clear one, or I might just get a nice big fat rubber one. I haven't decided yet. There's a tiny little scratch here as well, and a tiny little scratch there as well. But again, 16 years old. But it's got impeccable service history. There was an old guy who had it. He bought it in 2004. I can only assume he was Scottish because his name was Angus. And I don't know anybody that isn't Scottish, so it's called Angus anyway. And I think he was a slightly older gentleman. And I didn't know, and I thought I knew a little bit about Ducatis, but I didn't realise that you had to change the cam belts on these, the timing belts, every 2 years. or 12,000 miles, which, I mean, I always thought it was 15,000 miles or 5 years, but it seems that that's like for the newer generation. So that came as a bit of a shock considering the belts were done 2 years ago. Now, the bike's only travelled 400 miles in that 2 years. I spoke to my local mechanic at the Checkered Flag where I live, and he said, look, Dan, you really don't need to. You know, there's no way that the belts have degraded that much. It's been in a garage, by the way, and he said there's no way the belts will have degraded that much in 400 miles over 24 months if it's been kept, you know, in a garage. But then you go on the forums and people say, look, you know, it's under tension for 2 years and it hasn't moved really hardly. So to be quite honest, I'm probably going to do it because I would like to keep the service history up on this bike. I mean, if it's got full, pretty much Ducati service history, it's only a couple of £100 to get the belts done. Why not do it? I know exactly where I stand. It's a good selling point for when I decide to sell it. I can say the belts have just been done. You spend £200 on it, you can add £300 to the price. You know, that's the way I look at things. This, as has been the case for most of my recent bikes, is totally stock. As you can see, it's got the stock exhausts, it's got the stock lights, stock indicators. Everything is pretty much as it should be. It's not been messed about with at all, which, I mean, I'm glad to see that, because at the end of the day, if somebody pisses about with one of these kind of bikes, they need a slap, quite frankly, because it's just a stunningly beautiful bike, and it should remain the way it came out the factory in that respect. It does have luggage as well, matching red Ducati luggage. Now, I saw those and they're very useful and they're very nice to have, and again, it will add value, I think, pretty much to the bike when I go to sell it on, which, you know me guys, I probably will. But the first thing I did, because I don't like the look of the frames, because it has these kind of like trellis frames almost here, which bolt into the exhaust mount, the foot peg, and a couple of other spots underneath the seat here, I whipped them off because I think it cleans the lines up. Plus also, these indicators actually stick onto the trellis framework, so they stick out like here somewhere. So I literally, within half an hour of the guy dropping off the bike, I whipped off the luggage, whipped off the framework, and remounted the indicators where they should be back there. What else? The stickers are the same pretty much this side as well, but as you can see, it's a stunner. I mean, it really has been so well looked after. It's even had new brake discs, and as you can see, those aren't 16-year-old brake discs, are they? I think 2 years ago, when the last belt service was done, they did the discs, they did the pads. They spent about £1,500 basically on the service for this, the last one, which was in 2018. You know, so someone has looked after this. I mean, as I said, the guy who bought it originally in 2004 sold it in 2019, and I bought it off that guy because he had too many bikes apparently, and he just decided it was time to move one on, which is fair enough. That's where I come in. Price wise, I mean, I got this silly money in my opinion. I think these should be anywhere between £2,500 and £3,500 depending on mileage. Now bear in mind, this has done less than 12,000 miles with a full service history, you know, a very good service history in my opinion, and I managed to pick this up for £2,000. Yep, you heard me, £2,000 for this 1000cc Ducati in impeccable condition in my opinion, and with a great service history, you know, and it's the S as well, so, you know, why wouldn't you? You know, there's no kind of real corrosion on here to speak of. Even the rear shock, as you can see, is incredibly clean. I did manage to get some of the colour back on that rear caliper as well. I'm going to have to get out of the way in a minute, guys, because I'm parked in somewhere where cars do come past. But being in the middle of summer, there's tourists everywhere, so this was the only spot I could find to actually find to make this video for you guys, so that didn't involve loads of traffic noise. Anyway, I digress. Back to this. Now, I have just noticed there's another little scuff there, and I think there's a little mark on this mirror as well. But as I said, I mean, when you look at this, it's, you know, it sticks out a bit, it has to be said. And this kind of stuff here, that is just crap from road, so don't worry about that too much. I have considered putting some LED light bulbs in here, because I've got a set at home anyway, and as you can see, you can get 2 LEDs up here, 2 LEDs down here, maybe a couple of LED indicators, not sure. But again, you know, you're getting away from the originality, I guess, in some respects. I also would like to get a darker screen, because, you know, we'll talk about the screen in a second, but I'd like to get a darker screen, because I just think it would look kind of cool, and it does need taking off and cleaning quite well as well, because as you can see down in the recesses there of the screen, it's got old bits of polish and crap, but generally speaking, as you look down, you know, The yoke there isn't scratched to buggery like they sometimes are. The switch gear, the brake reservoir caps there, I mean, that one there I might whip off and just respray that and pop it back on again just to make it look nice and new. It's also got a Meta 500, I think it is, Thatcham approved alarm system on there as well, which came from factory, which is always nice to see. 3 keys, including the big red one, 2 alarm fobs. I mean, it's just, why wouldn't you buy this bike? I mean, you know, at the end of the day, I don't see how you could lose spending £2,000 on a bike like this, you know. Now, I will talk about what my feelings are regarding riding this bike. Now, I've been out for about an hour and a half, and I have to say, it's not so much the bar placement, as in, because obviously if you look at the pictures of my SS, my grey one, the bars sit down here somewhere, you know, these are much higher, but I think from riding it today, it's not so much where the bars are situated, it's the fact that you're leant forward so much, you kind of lean over the tank. So the pressure is on your wrists. You have to bear that in mind. Although this is a sports tourer and it's far more comfortable than the super sports Ducatis, it still leans you over the tank, which still puts pressure on your wrists. And I was getting it in the lower back as well a little bit. And this is after an hour and a half riding. So, you know, we're not talking about long distance here. But bearing in mind, I'm also getting it in the neck as well. I mean, a lot of neck pain. But again, that's leant forward. So you're kind of looking up through the top of your helmet, which isn't ideal. You can buy better crash helmets that give you more of a view through the top, so you don't actually have to lift your head quite so high up. But again, it all goes back to muscle memory. I mean, you know, if I was riding daily, if I was commuting on a bike like I used to, I wouldn't notice this, you know. But this is the first ride I've had in nearly 2 weeks. So, of course, I'm going to kind of feel it here and there. But saying that, it's nowhere near as bad as the super sports. You know, I can ride this for an hour and a half. I'll get off and go, oh, blimey, I'm a bit stiff. But to be quite honest, I wake up most mornings a bit stiff, and not in a good way. You know, it's getting old, basically. I think that's the bugger there. So, you know, it is comfortable, but it does put a bit of pressure on your wrists. The clutch is incredibly hard compared to some of the bikes I've had recently. I mean, it's quite agricultural in that respect. It's a dry clutch, obviously, so it clatters and it bangs underneath you, which when you first get one of these, it will freak you out a little bit, but it's perfectly normal. They call it the Ducati Symphony, but it's hard, you know, the operation, generally speaking. If you're sat in traffic, it's a bitch. You know, this bike is not made to sit in traffic. It's not meant to commute on unless you're commuting, you know, through country lanes or on motorways, you know, and there probably are better bikes for that, if I'm honest. So, I mean, generally speaking, I like the ride. I mean, yes, I can ride it for an hour and a half quite easily. I think it's easier on motorways. That screen does work incredibly well on a motorway, by the way, for wind deflection in that respect. So I don't know whether I could ride it more on the motorway. I don't really intend to try, if I'm honest. Well, that's why I took the trellis off for the panniers, because I'm not going to go touring on this. One, we're still in this lockdown, so, you know, where to go. And 2, I don't think I'm going to tour this year generally on any bike, so I just figured get the panniers off, get the framework off, keep it obviously for the next owner, and just ride it looking sexy as hell like this. But as I said, I personally think a darker screen on there would set that off quite nicely. I mean, I do like the front end of that, you know, this kind of real shiny glass effect lights there, you know, but with some LEDs that would look great, I think, personally. Make sure I don't get run over here. What else? I mean, this isn't the super fast Ducati like the Ducati Monster was, but saying that, I was looking at some of the figures just now. This is 2.9 seconds to 60. Now, that's the Ducati Diavel, is about 3 seconds. So, you know, when you consider that's the Testastretta 2 engine, and it's a 1200, this is the 996, so a lot smaller, but fractionally slower to 60 in that respect. I mean, you don't really buy one of these to go 0 to 60s. It's for just grunting along all day long, you know, and they do it incredibly well. I love riding these old Ducatis. It just gives you a sense of individuality, you know, and I said that, I think, about the other Ducati I had, the Monster 1200. I just like being a little bit different. And in red, I mean, as I said, I wanted this in grey with the red wheels, but in hindsight, I think it looks great in red, you know. People see this coming, and I did consider getting the exhaust so they could also hear me coming, but to be quite honest, I think these ones are fine. These standard Ducati cans are fine, and to get a set, in all honesty, you're probably looking at 3, 4, maybe even 500 quid. There are people out there that advocate that you can core these, they call it, which I did consider on my last one. You effectively just drill out these rivets, pull this whole shit out here, take out the core, put it back together, and obviously there's no baffle inside there then, so it sounds like thunder, which is great, but not so much on a longer journey. And of course I don't know whether you can put it back to stock after that, so it'll take away from the originality rather. You could, I guess, get a spare set, which I think a lot of people have done, get a standard set, which will probably cost you 150 quid maybe, and then do them, and then put them on your bike while you use it, and then put the originals back on. Anyway, I'm waffling now. Centre stand as well, while I remember it, which is bloody marvellous, and something I noticed yesterday when I put it up on its centre stand after it was delivered. I used the rear grab rail, which isn't ideal, and then I remembered that they give you this funky little handle just there. So basically you just pull that up, stick your foot on here, and away she goes. Comfort wise, that seat's brilliant, I have to say. I was quite surprised, and it only occurred to me after I'd been riding for about an hour that I didn't have a sore arse. I was thinking, well, hold on a minute, I normally get a sore arse on these after about an hour. Didn't, it's quite cushioned, as you can see. I think that's the standard seat, correct me if I'm wrong, but really, really comfortable. It's also got a trickle charger there as well, an optimizer jobby which came with it, so happy days with that. What else? Vibration, I must talk about that as well, because it is a big 1000cc V-twin, and it does vibrate, obviously. You do start to feel a bit of a tingle in your hands after about an hour. You start to notice it in your feet as well, just a little bit, not horrendous, but just a little bit. I mean, it's completely opposite of what I used to feel on the XJR 1300, which I'll link it up here somewhere, because that used to vibrate like a bitch and it was just too much. And I think the CB 1300, if you haven't seen that video, that seat, I mean, your arse used to vibrate all the time, but it was a high pitch kind of vibration. This is very much a lower, obviously being a big V-twin, it's a much lower vibration, but it will make your fingers tingle after a while. So I'm thinking maybe to get some grip puppies on there, because I've got a set at home. Not sure what I can do about the pegs, because it does come through the pegs as well, but not through the seat. As I said, that's incredibly comfortable. One little quirk which kind of threw me, I mean, again, if this is wrong, you tell me. That rear brake lever there, I don't know if you can you see how far that is in compared to where your foot would be? I couldn't find it when I first rode out. I was literally like this, trying to find where the rear brake was, and you have to really kind of get in on that angle to get to the rear brake, which, I mean, is that right? If you've got one of these and it's not right, tell me, because it just seems a little bit odd. I don't remember it being like that on my last old Ducati. So that kind of threw me, when I went to pull on the rear brake and I couldn't find the lever. Not what you want, is it really? I have done a little bit since it arrived yesterday. I decreased it all because, as the guy said, it's in great nick, but it does need degreasing and a little bit of a polish. And, little things like the gear selector rod there, that's all come up lovely. The swing arm, the rear wheel was just covered in crap, to be honest. So I think the guy who bought it off the original guy didn't really even get a chance to go out on it too much. So this is where I came in. I mean, he wanted 2,400. I then found out he needed belts, technically speaking. So I offered him $2,000 if he could deliver it, and then he did. So, why wouldn't you? I did wonder at the time if I'd made the right choice, but after an hour and a half out here today, in this kind of weather, yeah, of course I made the right choice. $2,000. I mean, what could go wrong? He says, fingers crossed, the belts don't snap on the way home. Because that's the one thing about buying Ducatis. I think they're the only manufacturer who use timing belts. So you've always got to be aware of that. It's a bit of a pain in the bum. But this is the character of Ducati in that respect, And they're not that expensive these days. I mean, if you go to Ducati and you get a Desmo service done, yeah, you can pay up to £1,000. But just take it to someone who knows what they're doing. Somebody experienced, who's worked with timing belts on bikes before, hopefully with Ducatis. That would be really, really good, and get them to do it, because my local guy said 3 hours, 35 quid an hour. The belts you can get for sub 50 quid, so you're looking at what, 150 quid to get the belts done, 200 quid total. If you may as well get an oil change done as well, because you've got to actually get the fairing off to do the oil change anyway, the lower one I think. So, if you said 200 quid, oil filter, belts done, stamp it all in the book, and then if you do decide to sell it, it's all done. Or you've just literally got nothing to worry about for the next 2 years. Why wouldn't you do that? And I'm pretty sure that's exactly what I'm going to do. Because if I tried to sell this now, someone would just say to me, well, the belts need doing, which is exactly what I said. I mean, I might just keep this for a little while anyway. see if I can find something else, but just keep this for days like this that I just fancy an hour out on a big V-twin to burble about and just have a little bit of fun, because I really do like these older Ducatis. And as I said, this is 16 years old, 12,000 miles, so you know it's barely run in, as it really, but it's in shockingly good condition and silly money, as I said. Anyway, I'm not going to waffle on too much longer, because otherwise I'll make the video too long and you might get bored. If you've got any questions, then stick it in the comments section. If you're thinking about buying one, if you've got one and you want to just inform me about anything that I've touched on today, great. I'd love to see comments in the comments section. It goes to show that you're kind of interacting with the channel. Talking to the channel, if you haven't subscribed and this has been of any interest to you at all and you'd like to see some more, then consider subscribing and give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Don't give it a thumbs down. We don't like that. That's just not fair. Anyway, I'm going to carry on going off now. I'm going to have another quick hour in this sun because it's Friday tomorrow and it's going to be like 35 degrees apparently, so I shan't be going out then, shall I really? Anyway, this is it, the 2004 Ducati ST4 with 12,000 miles for a couple of grand. We'll give you a little... Oh, actually, before I forget, I almost forgot, didn't I? Let's start her up. Now, let's get this on, because you've got to go through a little bit of a faff here. I'll show you the dash as well as that lights up, because I think that's kind of cool. Sit there and it'll say ST4 in English. And we should be able to just start her straight up. The usual kind of slight hesitation there from the starter motor for a Ducati. It's just the way they are. You'll get used to it. There are things you can do to fix that, of course, but you know, if you don't know about that, then just Google it. Basically, you've got to change the earth cables and stuff like that. Anyway, let's hear this old girl. And there she is. Doesn't she sound glorious? Not for everybody, of course, you know, that clatter, clatter, clatter. And as I said, with the exhaust changed out, that would be just stunning. I know, because I did it on the last one. Anyway, that's it for this one. As I said, if you haven't subscribed, then consider doing that. Give the video a thumbs up, and we'll see each other again in about 4 weeks, I guess, when I do the next review. All right, guys, take care now. Thanks for watching.